It was a quiet night at a gas station on the outskirts of town. The dim overhead lights flickered softly, illuminating the nearly empty lot. A rugged man, dressed in worn jeans and a casual jacket, pulled up to refuel his truck. As he stepped out, his eyes caught sight of a woman standing beside a sleek, black luxury car. She looked visibly distressed, pacing slightly, her hands clutching a phone as if trying to call someone. Her elegant appearance and the high-end car seemed out of place in such a modest setting, sparking curiosity. The man paused, unsure if he should approach. People rarely wanted strangers interfering. But something about the woman's demeanor, the faint panic on her face, nudged him to act. He sighed, adjusted his cap, and decided to help, unaware that this small act of kindness would change the course of his life forever. A few cars sat parked in the lot, their owners either inside the convenience store or long gone. The scene was peaceful, almost serene, but there was an undercurrent of tension near one of the pumps. A rugged man, in his late 30s, leaned against his old pickup truck, filling his tank. His clothes were simple and well-worn, and his hands bore the calluses of hard work. He had an unassuming presence, the kind of person who went through life without expecting much but always willing to lend a hand. His eyes fell on a woman standing beside a sleek, black luxury car just a few feet away. She looked elegant, dressed in tasteful but understated clothing, yet her movements betrayed her unease. She paced slightly, her hands nervously brushing her hair back as she stared at the pump. The car was pristine, but something was clearly wrong. Her phone was in her hand, but she wasn't making a call. She hesitated, glancing around as if unsure of what to do. The man finished filling his tank but didn't move. He could feel her unease, her quiet distress tugging at something deep inside him. Was she out of gas? Did the car break down? She seemed alone, isolated in her discomfort. He hesitated, thinking she might not want help. But then, as she glanced his way, her eyes briefly met his, wide, uncertain, and pleading in a way she probably didn't realize. That was enough for him to decide. He adjusted his cap, took a breath, and approached her. The man took a steadying breath as he walked toward the woman, his boots crunching lightly on the pavement. She noticed him immediately, her posture stiffening, and her eyes darting around, as if assessing whether she could trust him. "Evening, ma'am," he said with a warm but cautious tone. "Everything okay here? Looks like you might need some help." She hesitated, clutching her phone tightly in her hand. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied quickly, her voice polite but guarded. Her eyes flicked to her car, then back to the man. It was clear she wasn't sure if she should accept his offer. He didn't push. "I get it," he said with a small chuckle, stepping back slightly to give her space. "Strangers can be a little, well, strange. But I work with cars sometimes, and if it's something simple, I might be able to take a look. No strings attached." The sincerity in his tone seemed to ease her nerves, if only slightly. After a moment, she sighed and nodded. "It won't start," she admitted, her voice soft. "I think it might be the battery, or, I don't know." She gestured toward the car helplessly. "I don't really know much about these things." "No worries," he said, kneeling beside the car to inspect the situation. "Mind if I pop the hood?" She nodded, stepping aside as he got to work. As he fiddled with the latch and peered under the hood, he kept the conversation light. "Nice car," he remarked. "This thing's a beauty. You must take good care of it." She smiled faintly but didn't respond. Instead, she stood to the side, watching him work while keeping her phone in her hand like a lifeline. He noticed her subtle discomfort and decided to keep talking. "So, what brings you out here so late? Passing through?" She hesitated again before answering. "Something like that," she said vaguely. "I needed to stop for gas, and, well, then this happened." Her words were polite but distant, as though she was deliberately avoiding sharing too much. Still, her tone softened slightly as she added, "Thank you for helping. I wasn't sure what I was going to do." He glanced up briefly and offered her a kind smile. "Glad to help. Nobody likes being stuck, especially this late. You're lucky it's not too crowded tonight." As he tinkered with the cables, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and sighed before answering. "Hello?" she said, stepping slightly away. Her voice grew quieter, but he could still hear snippets of the conversation. "Yes, I'm fine," she said, exasperation creeping into her tone. "No, it's just the car. I'll handle it." "Yes, I know. I'll be there soon. Tell him not to wait." There was a pause, and then she added, "No, I didn't tell anyone. It's not a big deal." She hung up and turned back to him, her expression more guarded than before. "Sorry about that," she said, tucking her phone into her coat pocket. "No problem," he replied casually, though her cryptic conversation piqued his curiosity. "Family checking in?" he asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. Her lips tightened into a faint smile. "Something like that," she said again, brushing off the question. "My brother can be protective." He nodded, sensing she didn't want to elaborate. "Sounds like a good guy," he said, returning his focus to the car. "Brothers can be handy to have around." She gave a quiet laugh, almost to herself, as though his comment amused her in a way he couldn't understand. "Yes," she said softly. "He can be." After a few more minutes, the man straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag he'd pulled from his truck. "Well, I think you should be good to go," he said. "Looks like the battery cables were loose. Shouldn't give you any more trouble." She smiled more genuinely this time, her posture relaxing. "Thank you," she said, her voice warm. "Really, I don't know what I would have done without you." "Happy to help," he said with a nod. "Just glad it wasn't anything serious." As he stepped back to give her space, she glanced at him thoughtfully. "You're very kind," she said, almost as though the words surprised her. "Not everyone would stop to help." "Well," he said, tipping his cap, "sometimes folks just need a hand. Doesn't hurt to be kind." She looked at him for a long moment, as though debating whether to say more. But before she could, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, her expression tightening. "I should go," she said quickly, stepping toward the car. "Safe travels," he called after her, watching as she slid into the driver's seat. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story, but he let it go. As she started the engine, the sleek car purred to life, and she gave him a small wave before driving off into the night. What he didn't realize was that her call had been to her brother, and that brother was about to arrive. The man was about to head back to his truck when another car pulled into the gas station. This wasn't just any car, it was a sleek, custom Tesla, gleaming under the dim station lights. The man paused mid-step, his brows furrowing as he watched the car glide silently into the lot. Out stepped a tall, familiar figure. Elon Musk. The man froze, his mind racing as he recognized one of the most famous and influential people in the world. Musk's casual demeanor and purposeful stride seemed out of place in the quiet, unassuming gas station. Without hesitation, Elon walked straight to the woman, greeting her with a warm, "Hey, little sister." The man's jaw dropped slightly, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. The woman he had just helped, this elegant but reserved stranger, was Elon Musk's sister. "I'm fine now," she said, her voice soft but steady. "This kind man helped me." She gestured toward the man, who was still standing by his truck, stunned. Elon turned toward him, his expression shifting to one of gratitude. "You helped my sister?" he asked, stepping closer. The man nodded awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. "I mean, yeah. She was having some trouble with the car. It wasn't much, just a loose battery cable. Elon smiled, extending his hand. Thank you, he said sincerely, shaking the man's hand firmly. It's rare to meet someone who goes out of their way for a stranger these days. I really appreciate what you did. The man shrugged, still a little overwhelmed. It was nothing, really. Just doing what anyone would do. I'm glad she's okay. But Elon shook his head. Not everyone would stop to help. It might seem small to you, but it means a lot to us. He glanced at his sister, who smiled at the man with newfound warmth. I was worried when the car wouldn't start, she said, her voice carrying a note of vulnerability. You didn't have to help, but you did. Thank you. The man smiled faintly, still trying to process the surreal moment. I'm just glad I was here when you needed help. Elon studied him for a moment, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek black card. I'd like to repay your kindness, he said, holding it out. This is an invite to one of Tesla's upcoming events. It's an exclusive tour of our headquarters. You'll get to see behind the scenes and meet some of the team. The man blinked, staring at the card as if it were a mirage. I don't know what to say, he stammered. That's incredible, but you don't have to do that. Elon smiled. Consider it a thank you. We need more people like you, kind, humble, and willing to lend a hand. Before the man could respond, Elon added, and your gas tonight? It's on me. He motioned to the station attendant, who nodded in acknowledgement. The man chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. Well, I won't say no to that. Thank you. Elon's sister stepped forward, her earlier reserve now replaced with genuine warmth. You really don't know how much this means to us, she said. It's been a rough day, and you made it a little better. My brother's right, we need more people like you. The man smiled, finally relaxing. I'm just glad I could help, he said honestly. It's nice to know it made a difference. As the Teslas pulled out of the station, the man stood by his truck, the sleek black card still clutched in his hand. He glanced at it, a small smile playing on his lips as the surreal nature of the encounter sank in. What had started as an ordinary stop at the gas station had turned into a moment he'd never forget. Driving home, he reflected on the experience, not just the recognition or the gifts, but the simple truth behind it all. A small act of kindness had bridged the gap between two very different worlds. In the end, it wasn't about who she was or who her brother was, it was about helping someone in need and the unexpected connections that kindness could create. The man climbed back into his truck, the engine rumbling softly as he sat for a moment, staring out at the empty gas station. The surreal encounter played over in his mind, the distressed woman, her gratitude, and then Elon Musk stepping out of that sleek Tesla. It all felt like something out of a movie, too extraordinary to be real. Yet, the black card resting on the passenger seat was a tangible reminder that it had happened. As he drove down the quiet road, the events of the night settled into his thoughts. He hadn't helped the woman because of who she was. In fact, he had no idea of her connection to Elon Musk. He had simply seen someone in need and stepped in, just as he hoped someone would do for him or his family in a similar situation. That was the way he'd been raised, to lend a hand when you could, without expecting anything in return. But life had a funny way of surprising you. What had started as an ordinary act of kindness had led to something extraordinary. Meeting one of the world's most influential people wasn't something he'd ever imagined, let alone being thanked by him. And yet, as humbling as the gesture was, the man found himself thinking less about the Tesla invitation or the free gas and more about the woman's quiet gratitude. Her words stayed with him, you didn't have to help, but you did. That was what mattered most, that his small effort had made a difference to someone in need. In a world that often felt busy and disconnected, those moments of human connection were rare and precious. The open road stretched out ahead of him, the hum of his truck's engine a steady companion to his thoughts. He smiled faintly, shaking his head at the unlikely turn of events. He didn't know what awaited him at the Tesla event or if he'd ever cross paths with Elon Musk or his sister again. But that wasn't the point. Tonight had reminded him of a simple truth: kindness has a ripple effect. You never know how far one small act can go or whose life it might touch. As he neared home, the man glanced at the card on the seat again, the sleek design catching the faint glow of the dashboard light. He didn't know exactly what the future held, but one thing was certain: this night had changed him in a way he hadn't expected. He pulled into his driveway, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment in the quiet. A thought crossed his mind, one that summed up everything he had experienced. Kindness is its own reward, he murmured to himself, smiling. But sometimes, it can lead to extraordinary surprises. With that, he grabbed the card, stepped out of the truck, and walked toward his front door, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. If you enjoyed this fictional story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and heartwarming content. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this story. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, one small act of kindness can create a world of difference. See you in the next video.